Welcome back to another great edition of Talk of the Towns. We enjoy bringing this podcast to you, talking about all things town and town related. We have a great guest with us here today. We're very excited to welcome in Assemblyman Billy Jones. We'll talk to Assemblyman Jones in just a moment. But before we do that, as always, Talk of the Towns, it's all about you, really, trying to talk about the issues that you find important, what you find interesting. So we need you to do a couple things. Number one, drop us a line at info@nytowns.org, info@nytowns.org. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Let us know if you have some ideas that you would like to have talked about on the podcast, and we'll try to bring those to you in the future. As always, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Each of those platforms, if you can do one thing for us, if you're enjoying this, hit like, subscribe, and share. Share with a friend. Send it out. Share with a friend. We're talking all things town. These are things that are important to New York State towns. And that's why this guest that we have here today could not be more important and more relevant for us, because he is the chair in the Assembly of the Local Governments Committee, does phenomenal work on behalf of local governments across the town, and serves out of the 115th Assembly District up there in Plattsburgh area. Let me bring in now, welcome Assemblyman Billy Jones. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it's great to be with you, Chris.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Let's start for folks around the state who, may not be that familiar with maybe the 115th district. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your district, and kind of what you're doing up there in Plattsburgh.
Sure. Well, I come from local governments. I started out as a village mayor of my small village in Chateaugay, New York. It's a border town up here, way up in the North Country, and worked myself into county government and became chair of the county legislature, and then decided to run for state assembly 9 years ago. And it's been a great experience. Was chosen by the speaker to be the chair of the local governments committee last year, and my first year was a wonderful experience. Got to work with the Association of Towns and other organizations that look out for the betterment of our communities and our towns and our villages and counties. So it's been great. And my district actually is the furthest northeast in New York State you can go. I'm bordered by Vermont and Canada. So when you look at that boot of New York State, I'm the furthest northeast you can go. And more than half my district is in the Adirondacks. The other half is kind of flat land, more agriculture. But I represent 40 towns and a number of probably 14 villages now and 3 counties. So the geography is more vast than a lot of assembly districts.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a lot of local governments that you represent, and coming from local government, I think you bring a great perspective to the assembly, and it's always been very helpful. I know we've worked together very well this past year, and it's always been helpful that you have that perspective at the table of local governments, local to county up to state. I think that is a huge help for that, a huge benefit for the assembly, huge help for you and us and all the people that we represent together. The other challenge you have is you represent the Adirondacks and outside the park, so that's got to add a special layer to it.
Yeah, there's we do have the Adirondacks, and it's regulated by the APA, the Adirondack Park Agency. It adds to another layer of regulations for our localities, our towns and villages within those and hamlets within that boundary. So a lot of issues there. So it's just another layer that we deal with up here in the North Country.
And I'm sure you do good work with the AATV, the Adirondack Association of Towns and Villages, as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, they're great. They're a great organization. Now, you and I have mutual friends up there, Plattsburgh in particular, and I have on my calendar a special day coming up in Plattsburgh called Michigan Day, right?
Absolutely. We have Michigan Month. We have a Michigan Fest this year in August. That Supervisor Cashman is, he's been the head of steering that here in the town of Plattsburgh, and it should be a great and wonderful experience. And can't wait to see you. Can't wait to see you trying out one of our famous Michigans here.
I was going to say, can you just explain for the folks, because I get this question a lot. Why is there a Michigan month or day or whatever fest in Plattsburgh? What is Michigan? What's the meaning of that phrase, that word?
Well, it's and I'm gonna catch grief for saying this. It's a hot dog with you can have mustard on it, but it's, I don't know, around the state it's described as a chili sauce or some kind of, you
Uh,
know, I hate to say a spaghetti sauce, but it's a sauce on top of on top of that, and we call it Michigan, which is very unique because it's the only place in other parts of the state call it something different. But we've always been unique in being a staple here. We have stands up all over that open up in the summer that sell Michigan, so it's kind of been a staple of ours to have this. And when you come up, Chris, if you like onions, you say, "I'll have a couple buried." That's all you have to say. Don't say
all
anything
right.
else, and they'll know what you're saying. That means you bury the onions in the Michigan.
Perfect. Perfect. I tell you what, I obviously live in Glenville now in Schenectady County, but I'm born and raised in Rochester area. So at some point we've got to get you and Supervisor Cashman down to Rochester, and we'll share a garbage plate. And
Yeah, I've heard of the garbage plate. Yes, yes, absolutely.
so, Assemblyman, we talked about a little bit about you were named chair. This is your first year chair of local governments.
Mhm.
For us, the most important committee, I think, in the assembly for sure. Can you just talk a little bit about what type of bills or issues that go through that committee, how that kind of works, and what your role is in that?
Yeah, it's, we deal with a lot of, local bills, whether it be parkland alienation, whether it be dealing with IDAs, whether it be dealing with, just a real that has to do with um, government function within the towns and villages and counties. Dealt with a lot of EMS stuff as well. So it's as local of a local government committee is just what it is. We deal with a lot of bills that come out of there. A lot of bills dealing with coroners. Let's say, for instance, they all come through my committee, or
Mm.
different dealing with government procedure and such. So I share a lot of that with Chairman John McDonald, who is Gov Ops as well. But um, you know, a lot dealing with the issues and dealing a lot of procedural issues that local governments deal with.
And let me take a moment to thank you very much for your leadership on that EMS tax exempt. I'm sorry, the EMS tax cap exempt bill that you and the Senate passed. That was a huge lift for you guys. That was a huge benefit for all local governments across the state. So I thank you very much for your leadership on that, for working with us on that. We know it's on its way to the governor at some point. We hope the governor will sign that. And again, thank you for your leadership. Do you have any thoughts on if the governor has decided if she's going to sign that yet or not?
Well, we're pushing her for, to sign it. And Chris, and I know, dealing in local government, we have that issue with the tax cap, and a lot of our local governments want to do the right thing. They want to provide, whether it be public safety or water, clean water, wastewater systems and such. A lot of the stuff that isn't so sexy, so to speak, but a lot of times they are limited by doing this because a lot of things count against them on this cap, this tax cap that's been in. Oh boy, when I got into county government, probably, what do we have, 13, 14 years we're going on dealing with the tax cap. And
At least I was supervisor when it came out. Yes, I remember. So it's got to be
yeah,
about 13 years. Yeah.
yeah. So we're trying to take
So
steps to alleviate, some of the pressure and the burden on our local towns, to make sure that they can provide the service that our residents want and deserve, quite frankly. But a lot of times, very limited. EMS is a major issue, as you know, around New York State, all of New York State, every part of it. And if we can do something that can help them out and provide a better service, we definitely should be looking at it. And I think, taking that out of the tax cap formula, providing EMS services, which is true public safety, which is truly providing for residents in all of our localities here in New York State. I think we need to help out our towns and villages in doing that.
Well, we appreciate that very much, and your work on that and your leadership on that. So thank you. I think you've touched on a few of these already, but just want to maybe talk a little bit about what you perceive, Assemblyman, some of the challenges that are facing local governments. Obviously, the tax cap, obviously, we touched on EMS and some others, but what do you see as the biggest challenges from your perspective in the Assembly on the committee facing local government?
Well, it's obviously state aid, which we work on getting to our localities, because I often say that your most local government is your towns and your villages, right? And those they're the front lines. They're in charge of providing the basic services day in and day out for our residents, right? For all of our residents. And the challenge is, getting that budget and making sure that you can provide, and that local towns and villages and counties can provide those services to the people. And a lot of times, as you know, we are, on the local level, we have to meet certain thresholds. We have to meet those mandates that are put in there, all with good intention. But when it gets down to the local level, it can be very stressful to provide some of this stuff, be within a tax cap, and to provide the best service possible for our residents. So I would say, some of the biggest challenges that we as local governments face are providing the necessary services to our locals. And on top of that, a lot of times you're in charge of, zoning and bringing in economic development and doing all these things to help the tax base. And sometimes you don't get the benefit of that tax base. Right. We're charging a lot of, we're putting you in charge on the local governments of a lot of things to make life better for our residents, but not always getting, the benefit from that, I should say.
Yeah, no question about it. One of the things that we fight against all the time, or I should say, to frame it a little bit more positively, defend and try to promote repeatedly, is the notion and principle of home rule. And oftentimes there's sometimes some, pushback from the state on that, on certain issues. I think it's gotten better. I will say that for sure. There are still some areas that we need to do some work on, in energy in particular, and some other areas. You brought up planning and zoning. We believe that is the purview of the local government fully and wholly. But I think that you and I share the affection for home rule and the need to defend and preserve it.
Absolutely. Every year there are a few bills or legislation or policies that come up in the session, and when we're going through these things, that I don't think it's intentional in some areas, but it's chipping away at home rule. And we are a home rule state, and I believe in home rule, and I think we should keep that in place, no matter what. And because, again, you are the front lines. The towns, villages are the front lines, and we should do everything that we can to protect home rule.
No, I appreciate that very much, and I thank you for your partnership on that. I also have to point out and thank you for your leadership and both the Assembly the Senate and the governor's office, because, you know, this year was, I think, a good year for local government, to be honest. We have the temporary 50 million back into AIM again that we all worked for last year. It came back, so thank you so much for that. And the 50 million new in chips is huge, huge benefit to our community. So thank you for that very much.
Yes, and you know, we're talking about infrastructure here, and you're, you know that on the town level, and in all local levels, that you're in charge of infrastructure as well, and it costs a lot of money. And, we can talk about inflation and everything else and all those added costs, but it costs a lot of money. And I just feel that the state should and needs to do more to help our localities out with their infrastructure, because, like, I'll go back again, it's not very sexy, so to speak, but it's certainly, in our residents' day-to-day lives, it's certainly one of the most important things that we can do on local governments, is providing them with those services, providing them with good infrastructure, so that we can, that we can have our residents live a good life here.
I think, Assemblyman, that you hit on kind of one of the major priorities, I think, of local government, and maybe we share that this is probably a huge priority. As you know, the Association of Towns, along with our sister organizations, NYCOM and NYSAC, and many others, have been advocating, working with your office as well, and some others in the Assembly, Senator Hinchy, Assemblywoman Kellis, on something we call SWAP. Everyone calls SWAP, right? Sewer and Water Infrastructure Program, that is much like CHIPS. It's so, CHIPS is a formula-based aid direct to the local governments. And we're looking, you touched on this a little bit about infrastructure, and we're really working hard to try to make sure we get SWAP passed. It's not passed currently. We got as close as we ever had. The Senate put it in their one House bill, which was huge.
Yep.
The executive branch is looking at it, open to it. Got some work to do in the Assembly, but can you talk a little bit about, what SWAP is, what it means to local governments, and maybe what we need to do next to try to move it forward?
Certainly. I mean, we have the program CHIPS that we just talked about for our, for our roads and bridges and such. We need another formula so that our towns and villages and counties can really carry out and provide our residents with, clean water, wastewater, all those things that they need to provide to our residents. And I thought it was a wonderful idea. It was actually one of your members that came to me on it a couple of years back and said, "Hey, what about this?" And fell in love with the idea, so to speak, right off the bat. A chip style formula to make sure that towns and villages are getting what they need for their water districts, for just operating costs. Let's look at operating costs, how much it costs. Let's look at the personnel that we need, certified waterworks superintendents, certified personnel that deal with that day in and day out. We all know that we're at a kind of workforce shortage in a lot of those fields as well. So operating dollars put together in a chip style formula to deal with our water and wastewater operations and infrastructure is just what we need here in New York State to help out our towns and villages to provide those services. So we're still working on it. We've got to get it out across the finish line. And what you and I talked about, Chris, all year was, let's get a start to it. I mean, we're not expecting billions and billions of dollars in this program right off. It'd be nice if we did have it. Don't get me wrong, but let's start out with getting some money in here and getting a formula so that, our localities can maintain these facilities, and the residents, more importantly, the residents can have, good clean water and good clean wastewater infrastructure.
Absolutely. We agree wholeheartedly. I like to take pride. Everyone kind of talks about where SWAP what the genesis was, and it was really, you know, I remember because I was there at NYAOT like 13 years ago. It came through the Association of Towns, and so we're very protective of it. We believe it's a
Yeah.
great program for local governments. Our members are clamoring for it. You know, one thing I want to acknowledge is the state gives a lot of great grant opportunities. There's a lot of money towards grants. And you know, we're looking at for a program that's a little bit different than the grants, because if you want a grant, you can go out and apply for many grants through WIA and all the other opportunities. But grants, as we've talked about, one of the issues is it creates winners and losers, and it
Yep.
makes it puts smaller towns against bigger towns. You know, you have to compete against your neighbor towns, and grants are great for getting a lot of money to a few people. But this is something that'll get some money to everybody, and we think that's
Yep.
important. And one of the things I hear criticism from lawmakers on is, well, it's going to take away from the grants program, and it is not going to take away from the grants program, because it can be a feeder system into the grants program, because it is so expensive, as you know, Assemblyman. I don't have to tell you, but it's so
Yep.
expensive for uh, local governments to apply for grants, to administer grants. It takes a while. And so this is something that gets them something immediately to invest in clean water. And we think it's so important. So we're hoping that 2026 is our lucky year. And we actually get
Absolutely.
that across the finish line.
Yeah. And I believe it was you that you said something along these lines, along the line of saying we shouldn't have to have Hunger Games for, to provide our residents with clean water. I mean,
Yeah,
you've said the line to me many times, but you know, we shouldn't have to fight for money with other localities, cities, municipalities, water districts, to make sure that everyone in New York State is afforded the right to clean water.
absolutely. Our mantra is no New Yorker should ever have to compete for clean water. And we believe that wholeheartedly. We believe that should be the policy of the state, and I think nobody disagrees with that. So
Yeah.
I think we have a good shot at this year.
Yep,
So
exactly. And just another point on that, as you mentioned, a lot of our smaller towns, a lot of our smaller villages, and don't have the resources, so to speak, to go out and get those grants. And they, quite
right,
frankly, they don't have the time or the resources to get them. So I think we should level the playing field a little bit to make sure that everybody has that opportunity.
absolutely. A few moments ago, you brought up probably the second biggest priority or issue for local governments, and I know it's an issue across all industries, but local governments particularly are having a hard time here, is workforce development.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, the market after COVID, kind of like the private sector market, kind of took off and left local government behind, could not compete on wages. Tier 6 kind of like took away the retirement incentive for some people. All sorts of issues are going on. The association's doing a lot of work on workforce development. I think you know about it, Assemblyman. We were doing micro credential programs through SUNY, a bunch of other things. What do you think legislatively can be done to address or to alleviate the challenge of local governments with their workforce development issues?
Yeah, and I hear it all over. I hear it, all over the state, and in particular my district, where town highway departments are struggling to get, CDL drivers are struggling to get people, into, in the door. One thing I
Okay.
would say is we have to do something about Tier 6, because you know years ago the incentive to get people to go and work for a municipality, go to work for the town, was the benefits, so to speak, right? And you could kind of compete with private sector on that front. But I think we have to do more on Tier 6. We're chipping away at it, but we need to do more on Tier 6. Another thing is, teaming up with our community colleges, teaming up with these certified work programs, to make sure that we're giving that pathway to people, because I think people do want to go and serve their community and work for the water treatment plant or the town garage. We have to allow them, or the town highway department, I should say, we have to allow them more opportunities and a pathway to that. And maybe you throw out an incentive there, working with our workforce development people, our community colleges, maybe throw out some kind of incentive to get them into that pathway that they can go and work for their, their municipality.
Absolutely. I'm old enough to remember the days when you kind of had to almost know somebody to know about an opportunity and get into a local government, a town or a village or county. Today, people don't seem to really even know the opportunities exist within these local governments. So we're going to be doing more to try to expose those opportunities, to promote them, and try to do that through the SUNY system and some other great opportunities that we have. Legislatively, the association has worked hard to try to bring light, as I think everybody agrees, civil service is a little bit maybe burdensome, cumbersome, and maybe some
Antiquated.
reforms. Antiquated. I like to say, so on that one, I have something I say all the time. Look, civil service is a 100-year-old answer to a 100-year-old problem. And it's been solved. And it's something called labor law that they didn't have back then. And now we have labor law. So, one of the things it does, unfortunately, is it puts the local government so far behind competitively when you're trying to recruit. I've been in a situation as a supervisor where we've been recruiting people and they got to get, take the test, get on the list, get scored, get the list back. It can take 2, 3, 6 months before you hire someone. They're getting picked off in the private sector labor market in a day. They get a job in a day.
Yep.
It takes us months. And so we need to look at something there. And we've been working hard. We've talked about it, you and and I know my other sister associations are on this too, but hopefully that'll be a priority of 2026.
And it should be and I know some areas the state has stepped up, or the civil service department, where the help program and a few other these programs that we really need to look at the overall civil service system, so to speak, trying to get those test scores turn back around. And you know what? Let's make what we're asking the candidate about related to the job that they're going to perform. The biggest thing I hear about civil service testing, so to speak, is sometimes the test really didn't have a lot to do with the actual job that they're applying for. So I think we need to work on a lot of these issues. I brought it up in hearings. I brought it up along with you, NYAOT, and several of our colleagues have brought this up. And I think we do really need to make a fundamental change on how we go about hiring and reworking the civil service system.
Yeah, well, you bring up a great point on the testing. I've had some members talk about how they've hired people provisionally and they've been the best employees they ever had, and they couldn't pass the test, so they couldn't stay in the job. And that was unfortunate because they were otherwise, there's just people that aren't good test takers, that just that's not their skill. And so, a lot of work to do. So the session is done. You guys are done for the session this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So we'll be looking forward to 2026 on some of these issues. But in the meantime, we already talked about Michigan month and everything. You got a great summer planned up there in the Adirondacks? Any plans?
Right now, since it was such a long session, I say long session because I spent a lot of time in Albany, and that's what I consider a long session. But we are out of it. I'm just trying to play catch up right now, actually back in my district, going out to visit. I usually hit all of my town governments, every year, go and chat with them, just getting out and around the district, because it feels like it was a long winter in Albany, is how I would describe it. But something fun on the, I see my daughter obviously a lot more nice. in the summertime. So get out on the lake and enjoy a little free time with her is what I'm looking for.
That's nice. So Plattsburgh in particular, I know you have a much bigger area than that. My daughter went there to college, so I have a fond place for it. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. She loved it. So essentially, I know that I'm down in Orange County right now at a Orange County event, and it is probably close to 100 degrees. It's very hot. This jacket is really starting to
Yes.
drench me here a little bit. How's the weather up there? I know everyone's either complaining this year about rain or heat now for 2 days.
Yes.
How's it up there?
It is. I just had, and I don't know how accurate it is, but on my vehicle, on the way over, I had to run to another meeting before I got here. I had 101 degrees on my vehicle. Now, I don't know if
Yeah,
that's quite accurate because, but it's certainly hot. It's humid. But you know what? We have such long winters up here. I know, I find it hard to complain when I get any day over 80 some degrees here. So
I'm
yeah,
with you.
it's gonna fade away a little bit. I think tomorrow's gonna get a little cooler, and then we'll be back down in the 70s by Friday. So I'm
Yeah,
not complaining about it too much, but um, yeah, we have such short summer seasons here now. You won't hear me complaining too much about the heat.
absolutely agree. I try not to complain about any weather. I love the heat, but I like the snowy, wintry days in the winter and the hot, sunny days in the summer and everything in between.
The
So
change of seasons. There's nothing
that's right.
better.
That's what's
Yes,
beautiful about New York.
that's true. Very true.
So we've talked about a lot of really important things, workforce development, swap, chips, tax cap relief on EMS. Anything, Assemblyman, that I missed or anything you want to talk about?
Well, we could probably go on for another couple hours, Chris, like you and I, we often do. But I just want to thank, I really do want to sincerely thank NYAOT for the great first year and all the work you have done throughout the years. But it was a great first year of me being the chair of local governments. I enjoyed it, and I want to thank you and the entire team at NYAOT for just working with me and honing me in on the issues that are important to our towns right now. And it was a wonderful relationship, and I can't wait to get back into it next session. And obviously, look forward to working with you and your team in the future.
Well, thank you, Assemblyman. I know we had you down at the big annual meeting for the Association of Towns. You were a featured speaker at the dinner, and everybody raved about that presentation. They were very impressed. So hopefully you'll consider coming back down this February.
Absolutely, absolutely. I look forward to it.
And we won't complain about the winter in
No,
February.
can't complain about the winter. No.
I want to thank you for taking time, Assemblyman. I know you're busy. I want to thank our listeners and viewers out there for tuning into another edition. As I say, always, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on uh, Apple platform. Each of those, if you can hit like, subscribe, and share with somebody, it would be great. Like, subscribe, and share. Drop us any information you want, any ideas you have, any thoughts at info@nytowns.org, info@nytowns.org. I'm Chris Koetzle, Executive Director, coming to you from a very, very warm day in Orange County. Assemblyman, thank you for your time. And I'm hoping, it's on my calendar, I'm hoping I see you for Michigan Day up there in August.
Get a couple buried, Chris. Get a
You
couple
got
buried.
it.
Two buried. That's all you have to
You
say.
got it.
All right. Great,
Thank you,
great to chat with you. Thank you.
Same here.